James 1.
I'd like to talk to you today about some of the greatest achievements in the world that were achieved in Australia. We'll start with the Transcontinental Railway that goes right across Australia. It's the longest, straightest railway line in the world, and it was built using the Commonwealth Bank Reserve Bank powers, and the interest rate we paid on that was 5/8 of 1%. Australia being the largest island continent in the world, when we opened up that railway line from Western Australia back to South Australia, it opened up Australia. The reason I speak about this is because what happened in Western Australia just prior to that was one of the greatest pipeline engineering achievements in the world. An Irishman called O'Connor piped water from Perth to Kalgoorlie, and in 1908 that started our mining boom in this country, and we've got the greatest gold deposits in the world, but they had no water. It was built when we had no sophisticated machinery, horse and carts, jackhammers, picks and shovels, and they piped it over hills. That pipeline is still in production today. What an achievement. When they had to pump it up the hill, they had boilers and steam-driven pumps, and that supplied Kalgoorlie. You know how much wealth came out of Kalgoorlie. Started our gold rush, started our wealth. That's the Transcontinental Railway and O'Connor's thing. It was equivalent to the Western Australia's 1 year of budget that did it, and they got it back in 12 months. Then after the war, we had some great innovators here again, and we started on the Snowy Mountain scheme. It was a Labor Party under Curtin and Chifley to do it, and the Governor of New South Wales, Sir William McKell, who was one of the leading lights because it was in New South Wales, and that was financed as well by the Commonwealth Bank Reserve Bank powers of 5/8%. It is the greatest achievement in the world with concrete, and enabled Australia to become a world leader in concrete and highway engineering. It is the hardest concrete in the world because they manufactured their own sand down there. That sounds strange, doesn't it? Well, what they did, they ground up all the sandstone and used that as sand. But when they do that, you've got to extract the silica and mud out of it. And Sir William Hudson assembled all the geniuses, Australians and a few other people from around the world, to be the engineers and the design of it. And with the composition of different granites and blue metal that they got down there, and with the sandstone, and they ground it up in pretty large granules, not like normal fine sand, and the way they put it together, it's there forever. And people were astonished at the achievements. The Americans came out here and they said, we're the world's greatest, and we've done the Hoover Dam, and we've done this, and we did this, and we did that, and you people out here are backward, and you're run by socialists and all the rest of it, and we're the greatest tunnellers in the world, and no one can equal us. Well, that was okay until two farmers come down from Queensland, Leslie Thies and his brother. They had bulldozers and farming equipment like that. And all the records that these Americans thought they had went straight out the door when these two Australians started and broke all their records. So we took on the might. I think Australia only had about 7 million people at that time in Australia. And we imported, that was when we had the immigration scheme, and they all went down there and worked. There was big money, and it was dangerous. A person got killed about every mile from rock falls. But it was the greatest irrigation scheme ever invented in the world. And it generated electricity. There's no one in the world would be able to ascertain the financial gain that place has given Australia, because the electricity went Victoria and all the way up to Queensland. So we had free electricity to expand our businesses, expand our country, expand the states. It allowed us to import people, immigration. So the initiative of those men back then, at the cost of 5/8 of 1%, and we've got people now saying, we can't do it. We can't do it. We've got to get private-public partnership. We can't do it. Well, if we adopted that attitude back then, we'd be still living out of 44-gallon drums and lighting candles. Then we moved up to New South Wales, and we did the Warragamba Dam. That was done with government bonds. And you could, providing how much money you had, you could get up to 5% interest. Now this was in the late 50s into the 60s and when it was finished. They flooded Burragarang Valley. Now that enabled New South Wales to. We used to have electricity blackouts at those times before the Snowy Mountains and Warragamba, and water shortage before Warragamba was dammed, because we only have Nepean, Avon, Cataract, Cordo and Warrenora Dam, and that couldn't supply us because we were expanding so quick. So that's why we built Warragamba Dam. So that enabled Sydney and New South Wales to expand. So within conjunction with what we did with O'Connor over in Western Australia, with the pipeline to Kalgoorlie, the Transcontinental Railway, the Snowy Mountain Scheme, which opened up all the irrigation and Murray Bridge irrigation scheme, production, food production, employment, export. The rest of the world said, hey, these people out here, they're showing us a new trick. We've got to move in here. So then they manipulate the governments. Then we sign these agreements. Then we remove our tariffs for protection. And they send our farmers out. They can't compete because they're not being assisted like every other country with tariff protection. There's no one can produce what we can produce. And with all these achievements, and we can do it. We shouldn't have any problem with infrastructure. We've got the money here. They raise government bonds. The government get it back threefold. Like they did with the Snowy Mountain Scheme, like they did with the Warragamba Dam. We had electricity bonds. We built all the power stations. To stop us, said there was only Pyrmont, Whitebay, Bunurong and Balmain. They were the 4 power stations. After all, we used to have blackouts, and they turned the power off at certain districts and on other districts, and it crippled a lot of our production. Well, when the Snowy Mountain Scheme come along, that alleviated that. The same with our water. We had water restrictions. You couldn't put water because they were the only 40. When they put Warragamba in, no more water restrictions. And all they've got to do is harness our water. We get plenty of water, none of it's harnessed. And all we've got to do is get the government to start saying, we don't need to borrow, we can raise our own money. But the banks don't like it, because then they can't rape and pillage the people. If we raise government bonds with infrastructure, our railways, our dams, our hospitals, our education would all be paid for, and it wouldn't cost the taxpayer anything. They would make money out of it. And that's all we've got to do. So there's some of the achievements. We could go on for a week with all the achievements we've done with government bonds, but we haven't got, time doesn't permit us to do it. But there's some of the things, those dams that they built back then, the Nepean, Avon, Cordo, they're still there, still producing. The Snowy Mountain Scheme's still going, and it'll keep perpetuating. And the Transcontinental Railway, O'Connor's thing from Kalgoorlie to Perth, the waterway, unbelievable. All we've got to do is get governments to realise we're independent, and we don't have to be interdependent via the United Nations, who are directing our politicians through the International Monetary Fund, and our International Monetary Fund direct our treasuries. And then the treasury say to the politicians, oh, it doesn't work out that way, we've got the figures. They live in an office and don't get out and have a look. They've got no empirical knowledge whatsoever what this country can do. And it all can be done. We've done it before. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We've just got to go back and look at the success rate we've had before doing things and just emulate it. But we've got morons down in Canberra and in Macquarie Street that all they're worried about is their pension and giving us rhetoric, but they don't want to face the facts of what this country can do and what we have done, and we can do it again. Because Australians will do anything. They can do anything. There's nothing we can't do.